everyone, and welcome back to Learning Kitchen Live, week number 22. My name is Valerie. I'm the manager of nutrition services here at Community Servings, and I'm so excited to be back and talking to you today. We have some delicious things that we're going to make. The theme this week is healthy appetizers and dips, and the idea for this stemmed out of a conversation I was having with some of my colleagues. At first you might think, well, why would you be making appetizers and dips? No one's doing any entertainment like that, right? Unless you're standing outside in the cold. And I'll be honest with all of you, right now the kitchen where it is about like 50 degrees, so if I start doing jumping jacks soon, you'll know that. But the conversation that we had at work was about what are you doing to make things feel festive and special this fall? Because things feel strange for sure, right? Like we're in the middle of a global pandemic. We're all struggling to keep things together. We're struggling to manage kids, work, and just keep ourselves well and emotionally healthy. So what I've started doing at home is we've started making some regular things feel special in like occasions, and we'll do things like an appetizer night for dinner, which doesn't have to be fancy or involved, but it makes things seem a little more exciting, especially if you have kids at home, even if you don't have kids at home. So we're going to make 3 versions of some of my favorite appetizers today, and they're healthier versions, so they're going to be lower in salt and fat than maybe their regular counterparts. So again, not a license to eat all of them, but or everything in one sitting, but it's definitely things you could make for a meal and make something feel festive at home. So the first thing, we're going to make 3 things. So we're going to do Maple-Sesame Cauliflower bites, which are going to be these delicious baked bites of cauliflower. We're going to make a warm caramelized onion dip, which is super delicious. It's something that you see in a lot of restaurants, but we totally lightened it up. And then I'm going to make chocolate peanut butter dipped pretzels, which is not really an appetizer. If you ask me, it's an appetizer because I can eat that any time of day or night. But we're going to do that as well. So what I'm going to start with is the warm caramelized onion dip, because caramelized onions take a while to cook, so we're going to get that going so that by the time we're done here, we will have some beautiful caramelized onions and a delicious dip. So what I'm going to do is take a non-stick skillet and get my heat going. What I want to do is start these on slightly higher heat, get them a little bit browned, and then we're going to turn the heat way down low and let them cook for like 20 minutes or more. I mean, I've let caramelized onions go for like 30 or more minutes at home. We don't really have that time here. So I'm going to add about a tablespoon of oil. I'm using a canola olive blend. You can use canola, vegetable, olive oil, whatever you want. I'm going to let this heat up for a sec. And I'm going to I have 2 onions that I've chopped up. These are giant onions, so this looks like a lot, but it'll also cook down as it caramelizes. This is going to go from a really full pot to very little. And caramelizing onions is a great way to bring out their sweetness. We don't often think of onions as sweet, but if you use some sweet little onions, they taste wonderful. You're going to mix it with all kinds of cheesy goodness, and at the end, we're going to have this delicious dip. And what I'm going to add with pretty quick. I'm just going to swirl my oil around and add my onions. So these are just going to cook. We're going to kind of leave these here while I do all sorts of other things. And what's going to go with the onions is about 3/4 of a teaspoon of fresh thyme. And if you didn't have fresh thyme or didn't want to buy it, you could use dried thyme. You could actually leave this out entirely and just season with salt and pepper, and it tastes delicious still. For those of you who've never done this before with fresh thyme, the easiest way to get the leaves off are literally to just hold it and pull down the stem and pull all the leaves off. They sell little gadgets to do this too, which like you just pull the herbs through. And those are great, but you can just use your fingers if you don't want a gadget. The thing with thyme is the stems are really woody, so you don't want to eat those. You don't want those to show up in your food. They kind of be like eating a roast beef. So I think it's probably enough. I'm just going to give that a little bit of a chop, even though the leaves are tiny. So I'm going to add that in with our onions. And I also am going to add to that a little pinch of kosher salt, about 1/4 teaspoon. And I'm going to let this cook at like a medium-high heat for maybe like 10 minutes until the onions soften up and get a little brown. And then we're going to turn the heat down and just let them go. So that is the start of our onion dip. So the next thing we're going to do are make these Maple-Sesame Cauliflower bites. And this is going to be like deep-fried breaded cauliflower, but much, much healthier for you. And lowering sodium and just still really delicious. So what I have is just a small head of cauliflower, and I'm going to take the stem out of the middle and just cut some of the florets off. You want them to kind of be bite-sized because this is meant to be an appetizer. You also want to take out the leaves off of it. So I'm just going to pull this apart. Sometimes it just naturally breaks up, but like some of the bigger pieces I don't maybe have cut. And normally, my favorite way to have this actually is with a really delicious buffalo sauce. So you can make a really good hot sauce to go on breaded fried cauliflower. It's super not healthy, but it is really good. So this is a lightened up version. And once you get the technique of baking cauliflower like this, you can put a whole bunch of different toppings and sauces on. And it's just a really fun thing to eat and make. Like kids usually like this. This is going to be like really kind of sweet. And it might be a great way to get kids to try cauliflower too. So and then we're going to make the batter to bread this in. So what I am going to use for the cauliflower to bread it in is actually a batter made with chickpea or garbanzo bean flour. I like this recipe because the chickpea flour will crisp up really nicely, and it also, believe it or not, adds some protein to this to make it a little more substantial. But I want you to know you can totally make this with flour or cornstarch, really anything, any kind of flour, frankly, that you would make with a light batter with and just bread the cauliflower and bake it. Like I said, I like the chickpea flour. It adds a little bit of a nutty flavor and it adds some protein, but it can be hard to find and it can be expensive. I think this bag, it's a pound of chickpea flour was probably about $5, and that's pretty expensive for a little bag of flour. But I wanted to try it with this recipe, with this anyway, and I can give you some tips. If you did want to buy chickpea flour, what would you do with the rest of it besides keep making this dish because it's delicious? So let me just follow along with this. We're going to mix in. I have 3/4 of a I need 3/4 of a cup of flour. And I have a 1/2 cup of milk. I used 1% because that's what was openly available for you. You could use anything. You could use non-dairy milks as well, just not sweetened. And I'm going to put in a teaspoon of kosher salt, 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt, sorry, 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, and a teaspoon of garlic powder. And that's just going to give it a little extra delicious flavor. Not garlic salt, garlic powder. Two different things. I'm going to whisk that up. So if you were to use chickpea flour, you can substitute, and if you were to use chickpea flour with this and you're wondering, well, what am I going to do with the rest of this bag? You can substitute, in most recipes, about half chickpea flour for regular flour. So if you're making like a quick bread or something like that, you can absolutely do that and give a little extra protein to your bread. And I'll talk more about some other options in a moment. What I'm going to do is take my cauliflower, toss it in the batter, and just mix that up. I know that looks goopy, but this is going to turn into like the most delicious, crispy, crunchy crust. Alright, so I'm going to take this and I'll parchment lined baking sheet. You could also just use a regular baking sheet and spray it really well. This prevents sticking. Spread these guys out. And I'm going to put them in a 450 degree oven for, I'm going to check them after 10 minutes. We've said on Learning Kitchen Live, like over and over again, that our ovens here are super high powered. So what I'm going to do in about 10 minutes here, you probably do for like 20 in your home oven. So I'm going to bring this over. So we're going to try that for 10 minutes and give them a good stir and see where they're at. In the meantime, we're going to make a really delicious sauce to go on this cauliflower buds. Just giving a little attention and love to my onions here. They're getting nice and brown, but I don't want them to burn, so I'm going to turn the heat down. We're just going to let those keep going until they're all nice and deeply browned. All right, so the other things that you can do with chickpea flour, one of the most traditional recipes, it's from southern France, and it's something called socca, S-O-C-C-A. I think I'm pronouncing that right. I've made it a ton of times. And it's basically equal parts chickpea flour and water with some seasoning in it, like a little bit of olive oil, some salt and pepper, and you mix it together and make a batter. Put it in a hot cast iron skillet in your oven and either bake it or broil it until it gets nice and crispy and it ends up really nice and creamy inside. And it's almost like a flat, it's basically a gluten-free flatbread or pizza crust that you can put anything on. It can be eaten plain or with any kind of topping you like. So that's a really easy, delicious way to get rid of chickpea flour if you're looking to. So what I'm going to do while our cauliflower bakes and while our onions cook is make the sauce that's going to go on the cauliflower buds. So this is going to be 2 tablespoons of maple syrup. Every time I use maple syrup when we're teaching this, I end up not being able to open it. If you run into this problem at home, run your lid under hot water until something gives. This just goes to show that we're doing real live cooking good because this is not easy to open. There we go. All right. 2 tablespoons of pure maple syrup, not imitation. You really only want to use syrup for this. If you didn't have maple syrup, you could actually use agave if you have that. Ooh, just going to sweep into it. You could use honey if you wanted to. That would be even more readily available to you. All right, maple syrup, a tablespoon of soy sauce, low sodium preferably. We happen to, for some reason, not have low sodium soy sauce in the facility today, so I am just using regular soy sauce. 2 teaspoons of sesame oil, which again, if you don't have it, just use vegetable oil. The sesame oil gives it a really nice flavor, but it's not going to make or break this dish. 2 teaspoons of rice vinegar. And a half a teaspoon of ground ginger, which I normally would use fresh ginger in something like this, but the ground ginger incorporates really nicely and gets spread out among all of the cauliflower and gives it like a nice little spicy bite. So that's it. It's just this little bit of sauce. I'm going to whisk together, and after the cauliflower has mostly cooked, we're going to toss it with this on the sheet pan, and it will, and put it back in the oven for like 5 minutes, and we'll have this really delicious, salty, sweet, savory sauce on my cauliflower bites. So I'm going to let that go. Give a little more attention to my onions here. These are coming along very nicely. I'm going to do my best in our time together today to get these like as caramelized as possible. But like I said, sometimes you can, if I let caramelized onions go for like 30 minutes. And so we'll see how far we can go with them today. All right. Our final recipe that we're going to do while I finish letting the onions go is peanut butter and chocolate dipped pretzels. And you know, again, this is maybe not what you would consider an appetizer, but I think it's delicious and it's a little treat. It's not the worst thing in the world to eat. Serving size is 3 of these. So you can have 1 or 2 servings and actually not do that much calorie or sugar damage, to be honest. So what I have is about 1/2 cup of chocolate chips, and I'm going to melt these in the microwave. So I'm going to turn my back to you for a moment. Go for about 20 seconds in the microwave. You can melt chocolate in a variety of ways. The old school way is to do it on a double boiler on the stove. But I find the microwave to be really good if you do it in like 15 or 20-second intervals and then keep stirring. You still want to scorch your chocolate. All right. We're going to keep doing that. And then I'm going to use these honey wheat braided twists, which I think are delicious. They're like these kind of salty, sweet pretzels. You could use any pretzels, rods, like regular pretzels. I mean, honestly, you could probably just eat the peanut butter and chocolate dip by itself, and it would be absolutely delicious, but this is a good vehicle to do it with. You can see those are starting to melt. So when you're doing chocolate in the microwave, you want to let it melt a little, stir it up, and then put it back in and do it in short intervals again so you don't burn it. So we're going to do our best here with that. I love anything with chocolate and peanut butter, and frankly, like I'm the one in the house who steals all of my kids' Reese's peanut butter cups out for Halloween. So this is like the best little treat that I could make myself. So we have melted chocolate goodness. I'm not even going to put this back in. If you keep stirring it, the lumps will just melt. So that's perfect. And what we're going to stir into this is about a half a cup of creamy peanut butter. And this is one of those recipes where ideally you want to use like real creamy, not natural peanut butter. It just incorporates better. The oil won't be separated out. But if all you have at home is the natural peanut butter with the oil comes up to the top, just give it a really good stir and put it in, and it should be okay. All right. I'm going to try to keep my coworkers in the background here from jumping over the island and eating this right now. So honestly, like this would be great as is, and you could just stand here and dip pretzels in and eat it like this. But what we're going to do with this recipe is dip some pretzels in, like about halfway, let some of it run off, and just put them on a parchment-lined baking pan to cool. And we're not going to be able to do this today here, but the finished product I would put in the freezer probably for about 30 minutes and let them get good and hard. And that way, actually you can harden the chocolate and peanut butter mixture, and these make a great gift to give someone if you can hang on to them that long, which I suspect you can't. This is a great activity for kids to do too, to be honest. Oops, there's my cauliflower buds. Let's check those out. Woo! So 10 minutes even in our oven might have been a bit ambitious. I'm going to leave these right here. Those got good and toasty. So I am going to toss these with this maple sesame sauce that we mixed up. And I'm going to, given what the oven just did in 10 minutes, I'm going to put these back in for about 2 minutes. And just let them, those even stuck to the parchment line sheet. So I am going to let these, there we go, just get good and covered in this glaze, which is going to get a little caramelized when I put it in, and I'm literally going to do this for like a minute. Those might be a tad bit more browned than you would want them to be if you were making this yourself, but they'll still be delicious. All right. So we have the onions are just about ready. I'm going to give them like 2 more minutes. I will dip a handful more of these pretzels. And then take my cauliflower out before it gets totally scorched. Right. Look at how fun these are. See, these are now included in that maple sesame deliciousness. This is really hot, so I'm going to let it sit here for a few minutes. But what we're also going to do is when they cool for just a minute, we'll plate them up and garnish them with some cut up scallions and some sesame seeds. And this sesame seeds are really expensive. I think they're a nice touch, but nothing that you have to include to get the flavor. All right, so last but not least, our onion dip. These onions are looking good. I think if I had maybe like 10 or 15 more minutes, I would let them go, but in the interest of time here, I'm going to finish this pickup. So, in order to do that, I'll turn my heat off. And I'm going to put these, actually this is just the bowl that the raw onions are in. Move that over here. And I am going to add to these a half a cup of low-fat sour cream. And this brought up an interesting discussion about like when it's best to use lower fat things like dairy products. And I think things like sour cream and mayonnaise, in a lot of applications, you can use a low fat version, save a lot of calories, and you don't notice a taste difference at all. So that's where this recipe gets really nicely lightened up, is that we're using lower fat dairy products. You could also use like 2% Greek yogurt instead of sour cream, and that would be just as delicious. All right, so we have sour cream. I'm going to use a third of a cup of light mayonnaise. I'm sure that's like a sacrilege to some people, but actually you cut out a lot of fat with this, and you really can't tell the difference. Maybe if you're eating it on a sandwich, you might be able to tell, but in a dip like this, the white doesn't make a big difference. I think I need a third of a cup of Parmesan cheese. So just grated Parmesan cheese. Too extra doesn't hurt. And then I'm going to use 1/3 less fat cream cheese, which is also called Perfecto cheese. I always feel like I butchered that name, but it's actually really good. If you're eating it on a bagel plain, you might be able to tell the difference. But if you're putting it in something like a dip, you really can't tell the difference from full fat cream cheese, and you just see some fat and saturated fat. So this is, I'm going to use about. I'm going to use like 1/3 of this package. It's about a cup. Okay. And that goes. I'm going to mix this all up. The cheese, because the onions are so hot, the cheeses are going to melt. And this is going to be like this delicious creamy dip. The last thing that we're going to add is, and these are totally optional, I'm going to put in like a dash of Worcestershire sauce and a dash of hot pepper sauce. Again, totally optional. If you're making this, I may actually leave the Worcestershire out, and I'll tell you why. One of our staff here, a couple of our staff actually, who are going to maybe taste this afterwards, are vegetarian, so I'm going to leave that out. Worcestershire sauce is fish-based, so I have some here, and it's delicious. It gives like a lovely umami, like rich flavor to things, but I'm going to leave it out because it's not vegetarian. So we're going to do that, and I'll put extra hot sauce in. And I'm also going to season it with a little bit of salt and pepper. So a 1/4 teaspoon of salt and a little bit of black pepper. And then I have some hot sauce. I'm using sriracha, but you could use literally any hot sauce that you have on hand. It's really delicious. And that is it. Now, I know at the beginning I talked about how my thoughts about doing these recipes today was because we're trying to make the everyday seem a little more festive right now, but you could really serve any of these any time of year to guests, and they would never know that they were lightened up versions of anything. And I'm going to serve this with some pita chips that I did not make myself. We're big fans of using leftover tortillas here and baking them up and making our own chips. I did not do that today, but we use some pita chips, some carrot sticks. You could serve this with any kind of crackers or vegetables. Eat it straight up, it would be delicious. We have our pretzel sticks that, again, if we had a little more time, I would be putting them in the freezer to let them get nice and firm before eating them. And then we have our Maple-Sesame Cauliflower bites. And the way I'm going to plate these up is just put them on a serving dish. And sprinkle them with some green onions and a few sesame seeds. And that's it. So thank you everybody for joining in today. I hope this inspired you to make some of your regular meals this holiday season seem a little more festive. And this is a good, healthy way to do it. And we'll see you back here next week. Have a great day.